everybody. It's nice to be here with you all and hope you're all enjoying your summer.
Summer.
Yes, it's beautiful. It's been beautiful around here.
Yeah, it has been.
So we were just starting to get some summer weather, so it's been really nice. Yeah.
So we wanted to come on to kind of show face, to connect with our audience. Hey, what's up, my friend? And kind of share some stuff over the next few weeks. Today we want to talk about kind of our approach, our simplistic approach on how to outsmart stress.
I think it's what we do.
It is what we do.
It's exactly what we do.
100% what we do. And just a reminder to everyone, we are filming on Instagram there and Facebook here. It's the only way. Instagram likes to record like this, and this is why it's hard to see two people on Instagram. And you'll see us look up and down because of Facebook. We're going to be all over the place. So just take that in mind when you watch this. If you can't make the call and you're watching this, hey, Rachel, on the playback, please put your question in the comments. If you're on Instagram, you can message us any questions, and we'll do our best to answer them in the stories. But Facebook, just put your questions in the comments, as well as when you're listening to this right now.
Yeah, if you guys have a question pop up, definitely don't hesitate. We'll do what we can to get it answered, for sure.
Thanks, Annie.
Thanks, Annie.
Hey, Sarah. So this is what we want to talk about today, because this is kind of our approach. We're really helping people regulate stress because we really vibe, or kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Align with the whole principle of, like, most disorders, diseases, symptoms all start from stress. You know, and when we talk about stress, we don't mean just like, oh, I'm stressed. You know, really
I don't think we're taking into consideration the different levels of stress that we're faced with on the daily. And when we're talking about this, we have internal stressors, external stressors. We have traumas that are been recent. We have traumas that have been, from years and years and years ago, from childhood. Some we're aware of, some we're not aware of. Some of us feel the stress. Most of us don't feel the stress. And the bottom line is that most people, a majority of the population, is living in this stress state and functioning highly on stress hormones, which is contributing to this increase in chronic disease that we are seeing today.
I think a lot of people, when they start working with us, they think, oh, it's nutrition, we're going to do nutrition. The more we get into it and the more we start talking, the more they start tuning in to realizing like, hey, this happened, like, this all started in my 20s. Like, I was talking to a guy yesterday, and he was like, I remember exactly to the day when my kind of disease process began, and like Jeannie said, a lot of us have traumas in our life, and things that we can connect with and things that we can't connect with, whether it be like taking the birth control pill, or who knows, not eating enough food or overtraining. Sometimes we're just not aware. But from our standpoint, on kind of a physiological level, when we say stress, we mean the demands being placed on the organism of the human exceed what the human can handle, right? It almost means like your energy bank account is here, but the demands being placed on the system are here, right? You don't have enough energy to support what's being put onto you or the stresses in your life. And anytime that happens, no matter how clean you eat, no matter how good you feel, if you don't have the energy to meet the demands being placed on you, your body is going to go into that stressed physiological state.
And we want to remind you guys that is what you're designed to do, right? That's exactly what you're designed to do. And again, the problem today is that people are not able to recover. And the effects the stresses are having on the system are being met with things that are actually driving the body into a deeper state of dysfunction, right? Because when we are stressed, our ability to regulate our blood sugar gets very thrown off. Our ability to digest gets very thrown off. So then we begin to build a bunch of intolerances, reactions to food, immune system issues. It just begins to build over time. So I think that that's super, super important to understand.
Yeah, I mean, the example we use, or everyone uses, is like running from a lion, or sometimes, people talk about, you get on a roller coaster, you get a little bit kind of dry mouth, butterflies in the stomach. It's scary. Your body goes into that kind of alarm, kind of survival mode. You get off the roller coaster, you regulate in 5 minutes. The problem is most of us, because we are maybe overtraining, or we have to work crazy hours, or we have 4 kids, or
entrepreneurs,
dieting, entrepreneurs, or whatever it may be.
Parents, yeah. There's a million things, right?
There's a list of a million things. But the bottom line is, it's almost like we're getting on this roller coaster as a society, and we're never getting off. And we can see it, like Jeannie said. I remember back in the day when I got into this industry, you probably remember the same thing. It was literally all I did was help people eat organic food.
Go grocery shopping.
That was it.
Shift their foods.
That was it. It was 100%. Let's talk about organic food, the benefits, and how do we eat it. We didn't talk about SIBO. There was no such thing. We didn't talk about autoimmune diseases. There was no such thing. We didn't talk about H. pylori, parasites, adrenal fatigue, all these things. The evolution over the past 20 years of being in this industry, that's where we're at. Why? Because we're seeing the evolution of our society go, do, right? Don't feel, take something without putting in the work. We're seeing the evolution of our physiology go from, I got on the roller coaster and I never got off, right? And this is why we have diets to fix A, B, C, and D. The problem is we're not really changing the state of the system, right? Yeah, we're doing keto or paleo or whatever it may be, but we're still on the roller coaster physiologically. So our philosophy is really designed to eat or do things strategically in our life, so we're changing the state of our body, right? It's almost like you have to put out the fire before you do anything. And that's what we're trying to do physiologically.
And that's been the missing link over and over and over and over again, and working with hundreds upon hundreds of people around the world. It's like you do this. We've been practicing these principles for over 10 years now. So we've worked with a lot of people, but over and over and over again, it's been that same, we've been presented with that same exact issue, right?
We just did a group coaching program. It's our first time doing it, the RTN group coaching program. If you want to learn more about it, if you're on Instagram, the link's in our bio. Facebook, I will put a link to, it's on our website, eastwesthealing.com. You can check it out there as well on Facebook. And at the end, we talk to people and we ask them some specific questions. The 24 people that were in there, the major theme was, I am stressed. My life is crazy. I have 4 kids. We're moving. My job's stressful. I'm stressed out about the vaccine laws. I'm stressed. That is the underlying theme of our society.
Yeah, now, we're all trying to heal in this state. And that's what I'm saying. It's like
crazy.
That's the biggest thing we've come up against over so many years, is people trying to heal in this state. And what we need to do first is and like Josh says, we've got to put out the fire, right? We've got to get you off that roller coaster in order to quiet your body so that you have the tools you need to heal, right? And you're not kind of knocking your head against the wall trying to figure out why things are not changing.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just going to say something, completely drew a blank on it. So we're not saying you have to sell your kids, or you have to quit your job, or you should live in a glass house or a bubble. That's not what we're saying.
But I think that's what a lot of people hear.
Yes.
And then when we say, it's stressful, we all have stress. What am I going to do? Quit my jobs, get rid of my kids, dump my husband, whatever it may be? No. But what you have to begin to do is understand that your body's responding to the environment that it's in and showing you very clearly that it cannot tolerate the way that you're doing things in this moment. So it's what we want people to do is to begin to look at that and say, okay, well, what is my story? What is all of this? Where have I come from? What do I need to know about that? What do I need to understand about that? Where am I physiologically right now? When we have those real-time assessment tools that show us exactly what's happening in your body at any given point of the day, so you can begin to understand and develop that awareness that gives you the opportunity to begin to make those changes in a way that supports your healing process. A lot of programs and protocols out there are so fast. Do this, X, Y, Z, and boom.
Because they're all focused on the goal, right? Everyone's focused on, how do I get rid of my SIBO? How do I get rid of my candida? How do I lose weight? How do I fix my thyroid? Whatever it is, right? And I'm not saying we don't focus on that, but you have to focus on the journey. And step 1 is just creating that awareness. How do I not quit my job, still do my job, still be with my husband or wife, still work out, but how do I kind of surround the day every day to now if you watched in the beginning, now the demands being placed on the system are here, but the energy coming in and stored is here. So we're able to kind of handle and modulate the stress more and put out the fire. Once we do that, we get more cognizant, we feel more, we kind of begin to understand that when we do certain things, how they're affecting our body. And now we can start over time. This doesn't happen overnight. No. Say, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I need to start working out a little less. Or maybe I need to tune into how I feel and say, I'm supposed to go to the gym today, but I feel like crap. Maybe I go, but just like stretch for 30 minutes. Or maybe I go and do everything at like a low intensity. There's a million examples I could give you, but it's about tuning in to create that awareness so you're cushioning the day and surrounding that stress so it becomes less of a stress on the system. Why? Once again, the energy demand, right, is less than the energy coming in. It's that simple.
Yeah. And I think that there's phases of the healing process,
100%.
right? Like we were talking about going from 0 to 100 overnight, but it's about building it up over time so that you're developing something that is sustainable for long-term health, right? But also realizing that your physiology, your body is going to change as you heal. Where you come into the process, and again, where you come into the process is going to be very different than where you leave, because your body is going to be more efficient at storing energy. So when you are in that stress, it has those reserves to be able to support you through that stress, right? Whereas now, most people, again, based on our experiences over the last decade plus, have been that most people are in energy deficiency. And that is causing them to live in that stress state. And some people have a swimming pool potential and some people have a bucket. So when that threshold is going to be met depends on the person, and how that's going to manifest also depends on that individual.
And you can base it off symptoms, you can base it off how you feel, and we use a quantitative data like body temperature and pulse, because it shows us, it's really simple. We are energy beings. We essentially eat food to turn it into usable energy. That keeps our engine going, which is our mitochondria cells, the 37, some people say 50, who knows, trillion cells in the body. And what's interesting is all these cells, the only hormone that can affect these cells is thyroid hormone, right? So we want to keep that energy going. And the only way to do that is to make sure that what we're eating, how we're eating, and when we're eating is being converted to usable energy. And that's what we're seeing in body temperature and pulse, right? So when we're eating a clean diet, or we're eating healthy and we feel good, but we're waking up with 95 or 96 or a flat 97 temperature and a 40 pulse, unfortunately, what we're seeing is the food you're taking in is not being converted to usable energy, and you're not a thermogenic being anymore, and you're actually more in that survival mode, alarm state, catabolic compromised state. And that's not what we want to be, right? So our goal is to say, how do we live and eat in a way so we can change that based on how we feel and body temperature and pulse, so we can start seeing these changes over time and kind of tuning into them.
So I just want to touch on what Josh has said about the thyroid and affecting every single cell and tissue in the body. And how does that relate to stress, right? Well, some of you are already aware that those stress hormones are what suppresses the function of the thyroid, right? Because of the state of the physiology, those reserves are not available. So that conversion factor is not happening. So we have to replenish that. We have to give the body what it needs very consistently and very intentionally to begin to build those systems back up and restore the communication between your brain, your adrenal glands, your thyroid, that entire HPA axis, that negative feedback loop that drives all of your hormones. Right?
It's a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle. Right?
Stress is anytime there's stress in the system, whether you tune into it or not, it means we need more energy. Stress needs energy, right? As Ray Peat says, stress is the perceived need for sugar. And it's true. So anytime there's a stress in the system, the body has to compensate in some way. But that compensation, the hormones that are being released, not only affect thyroid hormone conversion, but cause sluggishness in the liver. Now the liver can't store glycogen to convert thyroid hormone, so it's this vicious cycle. And then when the liver gets sluggish, it can't, kind of detoxify estrogen. That blocks. It's this vicious cycle. And we could literally end that cycle with blood sugar regulation.
And
right?
by being strategic with your food and how you use it throughout your day. And that's what we're teaching people to do, is to get a little bit more strategic and intentional in that way, so you can begin to affect what's happening physiologically. So your body has what it needs when it needs it, based on your rhythms, your day, your activity, whatever it may be, right?
No, here's the thing. We're not saying this is like a 30-day thing, right? We're transparent. Like, this is something that you're working on a deep level. You know, you're 30, 40, 50, 60 years old. You've been in this state for a long time. Your body's been hardwired to kind of run from a line or be on this roller coaster for this long. So it takes time. I mean, our clients work with us from anywhere to 4 to 8 months at a period, but they're overcoming these issues without chasing them. So,
and they're learning
what
their body needs to thrive in their environment.
Exactly. That's the most important thing.
And that's where it becomes sustainable, because that's what your body's reflecting back to you, is I cannot do this any longer. Right? And here we're going to build you back up and say, oh, well, this is the way that I need to do it. Right? And it brings to so it kind of reconnects the whole mind, body, spirit relationship, right? Because I think, again, a lot of the times in health, we are really focused on the physical, and we ignore and completely disregard the other levels of who we are. And this does present an opportunity to begin to explore those areas in a gentle way, while also building those resources to build to process that information as needed and when appropriate for that person.
All that information that comes up, I think a lot of us it gets lost in translation, because we're living in stress, where we're so focused on doing, right? I got to do this diet. I got to eat these foods, instead of really paying attention to, is what I'm eating and when I'm eating actually working for me, or is it working against me? Because it can. Mm-hmm. So like Jeannie said, it's like the most important thing is creating that awareness. You know, I just had this exact conversation with a client this morning, but it's like, are we creating that awareness so we are meeting our body's needs, our life needs, our nutritional needs on a day-to-day basis, right? So we can make our engine produce energy, so we can tick, so we can feel resourced, balanced, etc. And then when we need to go into that stress state for some reason, we can, but guess what? We come back out, right? And that's the most important thing. Yeah. So we don't stay in that vicious cycle forever.
And you know exactly how to do it. That's the one thing I love so much about when I speak to my clients who do, because life is going to keep happening. You're going to keep changing. You're going to get nailed with all different kinds of stuff on the daily. But what I hear more often than not is, but I have the tools. Exactly. I have the tools. Not only did I have the tools, but I recovered much faster, right? And it's mind-boggling. So I think, again, when it comes to how we have a tool to manage stress, and we're all heavily stressed. Not only do we have a tool, but it's the tool, it's food. You all have to be eating every single day. You are eating every single day. So why not begin to understand how that food is affecting you, so that you can optimize that and create something that's sustainable and supporting you in your healing process. You may need other intervention. You may need other variables to factor into your healing process other than the food, but it's going to give your body that foundation that you need to have that clarity around what it is you need.
It's hard because there's a million people saying a million different things.
Sure.
But I can tell you one thing, and this is how we differ. And I'm just giving my experience of everything else. I'm not saying this is how it is. It's just how I experience it. Everyone's teaching you how to chase symptoms and treat your symptoms, to eliminate them. But remember this, the absence of a symptom doesn't equate to health. I have a food intolerance. Take out these foods. I don't have any symptoms anymore. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean you're healed. We are human, and we should not be intolerant to foods. When that happens, we know there's a big problem going on, right? I've talked about this a lot. But forget my whole point where I was going with this. Anyway, I lost my train of thought. That's okay. I must need to eat. Anyways, I got off on a little tangent. I forgot. Anyways, so
treating symptoms, but that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So we're chasing symptoms, and we want to kind of stop that cycle. Mm-hmm. And we want to say to people, listen, this hasn't worked for you. The proof's in the pudding. Look at what you're doing. Look at how you're feeling. Look at how many symptoms you have. Let's start just focusing on creating health. What do you need to do every day to live your best life? That's it. So today we wanted to give you a few things that you can kind of incorporate into your life to help you combat stress or outsmart stress. And it really comes down to blood sugar regulation. Why? Because as we said, when you do that, you take the burden off the adrenals, you put the fire out, you downregulate cortisol, you
give the body the energy.
You help the liver stop being sluggish,
yeah.
It can store energy. Now you're converting thyroid hormone, that goes in the cell, you're producing energy. And that's what we want to happen, which will be seen in body temperature pulse. Mm-hmm. So I think the first thing and most important thing, and this is where a lot of people struggle, is making sure you eat within 30 minutes of getting up. And this is tough for people. They say, I'm on thyroid medication, I can't eat for 30 minutes. Perfect. Wait 30 minutes and eat. You don't have to wait 60 minutes when you take thyroid medication. It's 30 minutes.
First thing, 30 minutes later, have something to eat. And why would this be important?
You have to think about it. And this is why a lot of people do not have an appetite in the morning. You have been fasting all night, right? You go to bed. You shouldn't eat when you go to bed, whether it's 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night and you wake up at 5, 6, or 7, or 8. Doesn't matter. We're fasting. Most of us don't have stored glycogen. We can see this in how we feel, our symptoms of body temperature and pulse. So we're waking up kind of in this, I'm on the roller coaster state. I'm in survival mode state. You're already in a stress state when you're waking up, whether you have a super low pulse or super high pulse. So how do we combat that? How do we nourish the system so it can feel supported so we can put out that fire? We get food in the system as quick as possible.
So we shut those stress hormones down. And we regulate the system right out the gate in the morning. Okay, you have to remember that most of you, because we've worked with so many people, cannot go longer than 3 hours with enough stored glycogen to keep those hormones at bay, right? So we have to consider that when we're going into a long period of fasting at this phase of your healing process, okay? Just realize that there are steps and phases and
it's a progress. It's a process.
You have to get through in order to recover that state.
Most people that wake up with a low appetite, that is the beginning of that stress response, the disease process. I remember Dr. Timmons 20 years ago said to me, you will know when someone's in a stress state and their body is moving in that disease process when they start to lose their appetite as a human, right? That should not happen. Now, when you wake up, for those people that have a decreased appetite, you might not sit down and have eggs and some potatoes or fruit or whatever it may be.
No, but I think you're saying something really important. I'm sorry to interrupt you. You have to meet your body where it is.
Right.
So it's not about forcing your body into a situation. It's about listening and paying attention. So if you do not have an appetite upon waking,
listen to your body. Maybe you have like a cup of broth and half a piece of fruit. Maybe you have like 1 hard-boiled egg and half a piece of fruit. Maybe you have a smoothie with coconut water, a little bit of orange juice and frozen fruit and cream and collagen, and it's 4 ounces. You just have to get something in your system. And what you're going to see is as you start doing this and doing some other things, your appetite, let's say your appetite usually kicks in around noon. You're going to see over time it kicks in around 11, and then it kicks in at 10, and then it kicks in at 9, etc. And it's going to decompensate as you move out of this stress state. So it's a process. There's phases, but you just have to get something in your system when you get up to nourish your system and meet us where it's at, to downregulate those stress hormones, right? So that would be the first thing that everyone should be doing as a human. And then people are going to say, well, what about fasting? I fast. We think about fasting. We've done many posts on Facebook, on Instagram. We've done Facebook Lives and Instagram Lives on it. We are not fans of fasting no matter what.
Well, particularly based on the work that we're doing.
Yes.
Because it does not align with it at all. And if somebody is in a very balanced physiological state, then it's a different conversation, and there's so many different variables that have to be considered. So just keep that in mind.
The second thing that we recommend for everyone is making sure that every meal and snack contains a carb, a protein, sometimes a fat. And I say that because a lot of protein contains fat. So if that's confusing to you, just make sure every meal contains our carb and protein. Same thing with snacks, right? So we never go, I had protein by itself, whether it be broth or jerky, or you're just going to have fruit by itself or some potato chips by itself. We never want to do that, right? Because if we don't get carbs, we eat just all protein,
we're locked.
We're locked. We're going to drop our blood sugar, right? If we just get carbs, our blood sugar is going to go sky high, and then we're just going to plummet, and we're going to get fatigued. We're going to get that reactive hypoglycemia.
So can I just speak to that for a moment? Because I see all these threads coming in about how I feel like I'm constantly eating.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know where you are in your process or what it is you're doing. I know that a lot of our clients feel that way sometimes through their process until they begin to see it on paper, and then it begins to shift things. But I also want you to consider what Josh just said. A lot of people think that we're pushing a high carb diet. That is not the case at all. So if you are over consuming carbohydrates and you feel like you're chasing your blood sugar from hour to hour or even every 2 hours, you may be pushing yourself into a reactive hypoglycemic state.
Or the other way, just talk to a client. Once we took him through phases 1 and 2 of our process, which is about 2-3 months, and we got to phase 3 and we started looking at macros, he was taking in way too much protein and not enough carbs. So he felt like he had to eat every 2 hours. Mm-hmm. Why? Chasing his blood sugar, right? So it's about the balance. Yep. But we always want to make sure that we have a carb and a protein with every single meal. The times you're going to add fat, a little bit of fat would be like if you're having chicken or broth,
breast,
stuff like that.
Yep. White fish, things like that have no fat in them, then you can easily add it in for sure.
What do you do if you can't get an appetite?
You keep eating.
We just talked about that. So go back and rewatch it. It'll be stored, but you just got to eat something small and light.
You have to eat something small and light, and you have to regulate your blood sugar throughout the day, which is going to over time stimulate your appetite. We have people within 1 to 2 weeks that are starting to get their appetite back already. Like, I'm hungry again already, where again, that smoothie, that lighter breakfast is no longer going to work, right? So we have to start exploring other options.
It sounds simple. Some of you, it sounds complex. Some of you, it sounds like whatever. Trust me. I mean, I work with people, and so does she, that, are very young. They've been fasting for years. They have zero appetite. And within 2 months, their appetite is completely back. They have more energy by following the basics of our foundational principles that we teach in our philosophy and our one-to-one coaching and our group coaching. Andrea, to answer your question, I eat carb and protein every time. I eat every 3 hours, so maybe it's not as much as I think. I think you might want to log a little bit to see it on paper, to see if there's balance with what you're taking in. Yeah. And
then compare it to what maybe you had been doing when you made shifts. A lot of people are eating 1 to 2 times a day.
Yeah. So that would be the second thing, which is a very important thing. And maybe you just work on the first thing. Get that meal in the morning, and then after a few weeks or 4 weeks or whatever, you're like, now I'm going to start getting a carb, protein, fat at every meal, right? You have to go slow, because if you do so many things at once and you have a symptom or you just don't feel good, you really don't know which one to fine tune. And that's why we go very slow with our clients. The third thing, which, you have to understand, this is all a process, would be food frequency. Right. And I know a lot of people say, like, we shouldn't have to eat food throughout the day. And, we can easily survive on 2 meals or 3 meals. For us, the proof's in the pudding. For everyone we talk to, whether it be on Instagram or Facebook, on the phone, our clients, it is not working. If we look out the window and look at the state of our society, it's not going to meet the demands that are being placed on it. So we recommend, now this is kind of cookie cutter, because we help people really work with finding their individual frequency, their individual timing, like what is going to make their engine really tick. But a good place to start, and then you can titrate, would be start eating every 3 hours, right? Even if you just go meal, snack, etc. Some of you might find that you need more dense meals throughout the day versus no snacks. Some of you initially might find that you need just, every 3 hours, small snacks to begin stimulating your engine.
Or every 3 hours, you need small mini meals.
Yeah.
It's going to vary for each person. But again, what we said earlier is that you have a small level of reserve from that previous meal that's only going to sustain you for a period of time. And then you've got to give it back to the body. And in doing that over time and with consistency, you're teaching your body how to begin to store that energy again so that you can go for longer periods.
And this is the most important thing.
This is critical.
When we talk about thyroid conversion issues, we talk about Hashimoto's, we talk about hypothyroidism, we talk about low blood sugar, high blood sugar, we talk about SIBO. We've posted about this stuff because these are all extensions of thyroid issues. The number one thing to regulate glycogen storage or the number one thing with all this is regulating blood sugar so we can reteach the liver how to store energy. That is the most important thing. When we do that, we downregulate the stress response, we convert thyroid hormone, and we get the cells moving again. And that is our number one goal. Because why? When we do that, we have an auto-regulatory effect on the nervous system, which changes the state of our physiology. And that is the impact of what we're trying to do. We're not just trying to say eat food. Yeah. We're trying to change the state of who we are in our physiology.
And most of you can relate to that because most of you have been down that path several times, right? So
Bella, do you provide meal plans? No, we provide a cookbook and meal and snack ideas.
Guidelines.
And we do provide a bunch of handouts, RTN handouts, dietary guidelines, etc.
Yeah. With
group coaching and regular coaching.
But I think that's important. Can I address that question?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a lot of dietary guidelines. You have a lot of tools. You have a food list. You have a cookbook. You have, our input meal and snack ideas. You've got a lot of tools to work with. But I think this is also an interesting thing because no one can tell you what your body needs to thrive.
Right.
You're going to have a guideline. You're going to be able to get to explore this. Nobody knows that better than you, and you're going to begin to become more aware of that based on the tools that we have to help you assess that on the daily, right? So meal plans don't work because people do attach to them and they say, oh, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make it easy. I'm going to plan. I'm going to build all these meals and blah, blah, blah. Doesn't work that
And that's
way.
a really good point. And this is why, like online, people always ask, is this a good breakfast? Is this a good lunch? Is this a good metabolic food? I always say, I don't know. How does it work for you? That is your biggest indicator of what you need to eat and when you need to eat. So that's why we don't give meal plans, and that's why we're not fans of meal plans. Because like Jeannie said, then you take away the awareness and you latch onto it and you're just eating food, but we're not paying attention to, is that food being converted to usable energy? And that's what we want. So ditch all that. Start playing with metabolic foods. Start tuning in and feeling, which is challenging. I know, I get it. But start feeling and listening to your body. Oh, this works for me. Oh, this doesn't work for me. I need to eat 2 hours here, but 3 hours here, maybe 4 hours here, etc. It's really tuning in and over a year-long period of time, really finding what works for your system. That's the most important thing.
Yep. The final
spinal
is
breath work. This is a huge tool that is something that me and Jeannie are really kind of passionate about. And there's many types, right? But it kind of comes down to it. There's really one type. It's called breathing. Right? Yes, there's Buteyko. There's
you like to complicate everything, right? You don't need to complicate everything.
There's heart resonance. There's yoga types of breathing. There's I forget the name of that emotional type breathing. Holotropic breathing. I mean, there are a dime a dozen these days, right? They all have all these different protocols. The bottom line is breath work. Breathing is a remote control of the brain. The autonomic nervous system is said to be a involuntary system, meaning like we can't say heartbeat, you need to beat, or gallbladder, you need to release bile. It's involuntary. But it's been shown through breath work or controlling our breath, because we don't think about breathing, it just happens. But if we think about it and we start to control it, we start to take control of the nervous system, right? And we start to take control of the heart. And it's been shown through a lot of research. I think Dan Bruel or Bruley, I don't know how to pronounce his name, talks about this. But anytime you use breath work to slow down the heart rate and blood pressure, we have a positive effect on cortisol levels, meaning we begin to lower cortisol levels, right? And it can be complicated as you want, but something we always say is like, instead of focusing on the destination and all the crazy techniques and devices, build your foundation, right? With food, with breath work. It's like if you were to do...
You got to start somewhere, and the best place to start is where you are. And I think if you jump again way ahead, you're missing the point and you're missing the opportunity, really.
The foundation is, am I nose breathing throughout the day? When am I mouth breathing? I just need to start getting comfortable with nose breathing throughout the day. That's the simplicity of it, right? Because if you can't nose breathe or you don't nose breathe, hey, Jennifer, doing crazy complicated breath techniques to alter your physiology, guess what? It's going to put you into a more stressed state. And people always ask me that question about Wim HOF breathing, and am I a fan of it? For most people, I'm not, because you're hyperventilating. You're blowing off extensive amounts of CO2, and most people that all people that mouth breathe are hyperventilating, just sitting at their desk, which
is, again, the majority of the population unknowingly, unconsciously.
And it's information. What does it tell us? Oh, that was a question. It tells us about our physiology. If you're sitting at your desk or in line at Starbucks and you're mouth breathing and you're hyperventilating, right? That means you just ran a mile at rest or 400 meters or whatever. Your body is in fifth gear.
That's what your body's perceiving.
It shouldn't be. It should be in first gear. We should be nose breathing. So for a lot of you, start there. For other people, heart resonant talks about, it's kind of a physiological effect where you resonate the heartbeat with the brain. And you use breath to do that. And it's been shown that if you can take 4 to 6 breaths a minute, right? And don't complicate it, right? 4 to 6 breaths a minute, that you can begin to affect cortisol levels. Of course, many other things. So that could mean doing a 5 inhalation through the nose and a 5 exhalation. That's 10 seconds. So we do that 6 times in a minute. That if we did that for 5 minutes, we would get that heart resonance. We'd lower the heart rate. We'd lower our blood pressure. We'd have a positive effect on cortisol, right? Of course, there's other tempos that you could do, right? If you did a 10-10 tempo, that's 20 seconds, you would take 3 breaths a minute. But I think for a lot of people that would be challenging. So I think for a lot of you, you can start with a 5-5 tempo. Another interesting tempo would be like a 2-2-4-2. Inhale through the nose for 2, hold for 2, exhale for 4, hold for 2, right? So that's 2, 4, 8, 10, correct? 10 seconds total. So if you think about it, that's 6 breaths a minute. And the reason that's a little different is you're inhaling and holding, but the exhale is 4 seconds now, right? So now you're slowing down the heart rate, and at the end you hold. So that breath hold has a positive effect on vagal tone because you're retaining more CO2. But you could really use any tempo. Our point is you now take control of your nervous system, and it's something that you can do in the morning, midday, evening. You don't have to do it all day long. I mean, you should nose breathe. You don't have to do the exercises, but it's a great way to begin to blanket the day and take control of your physiology.
And we do recommend that people move into the day and move out of the day as a beginning point or starting point with your breath work, just because that tends to be when you're the most quiet and aware, and then you can build on that over time. Yeah, but I think it can be that simple.
It is that simple. It doesn't have to be. I mean, I had a client, I stopped work with him like 4 months ago. He's actually a physician assistant, young guy, and he came to me for energy reasons and whatever, but he was on a CPAP, super young. And he just emailed me like 2 weeks ago, he's off the CPAP. And all he did is the nutrition philosophy with us, and we focused on basic breathing techniques. And he just stuck with it. He just watered that tree every day, and boom, we changed his physiology. And I think, I forget how old he is, but I think he's like early 30s, but he's off the CPAP. So it's awesome.
Lots of power behind 2 of the very things you do every single day, and that's your food and your breath.
Right, it's the foundation. If you are not eating right to affect your physiology, not breathing right, you should not be doing any other fancy thing.
Yep. Awesome.
What about someone who by default mouth breathes while sleeping? That's fine. Let it be. Yep. Focus on the day.
Focus on while you're awake. Yep.
Yeah, and that'll kind of work its way to the evening. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. So let's just summarize really quickly, and if you have any questions, post them, but eat within 30 minutes of getting up. If you don't have an appetite, eat something small. Make sure you eat every 3 hours, but pay attention. You might have to titrate that a little bit based on your needs. Carb, protein, fat every meal to create balance in our physiology and to, eliminate that dysglycemia, and start working on just some nose breathing throughout the day to take control of your nervous system. Okay. Wonderful.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, everyone. Like we said it before, if you have any questions on Instagram, you can post them here or actually message us. And then on Facebook, if you have any questions watching this now on the playback, please post them in the comments. Thank you for tuning in, my friends, and we will talk to you later. Have a great week.
Bye, guys.